You're walking through the woods when you hear a sound. All at once you stop, like something's watching you. A breeze rolls by, and you become aware of a terrible smell. Now all that's left is to wait. Wait to see if the creature watching you is a gentle giant or a mad menace.
This happened in the late 70s, as far as my father can remember. Around 78 or 79, when he was a teen, out hunting in the woods with his friend. This was a ways outside of Meridian, Texas, on a fall evening. My father and his friend spent a lot of time messing around in those woods, doing typical teen stuff, firing off bottle rockets, hunting raccoons, maybe having a drink or two sometimes. On this day, they were hunting for squirrels, so when they set out, my dad grabbed his .22 rifle. It was just a basic Ruger or something with the cheap scope on it. His friend had a really badass dog that wasn't scared of anything. He would run up to bulls and chase them. He would get into scraps with bobcats, and he would chase off raccoons. He was walking along with them in the woods that day. He said there was an old creek bed they would always go mess around in, so that's where they started. The walls of the creek bed were pretty high, so they hopped down into it and casually walked along, half-heartedly looking at the trees and such. All of a sudden, my dad said the dog started whimpering and wouldn't come out any further. It hung back about 10 feet from them, refusing to continue, no matter what they said. A few seconds later, he said that it tucked its tail and ran off back in the direction of the house. This made them confused, but they just shrugged it off. They took a couple of steps further, and he said that up ahead, the creek took a hard right turn, and elevated, up on the banks, were some trees. Now the sun was setting behind the trees, and beyond those couple trees was an open field, so you could see the sun setting relatively clearly. His friend stopped him and said, "Hey, do you see that?" and pointed in the direction of one of the trees. My dad said that he could see the outline of something big and seemingly hairy behind the trees, peeking out at them. They weren't sure what it was, so they called out, "Hey, we're just hunting over here. Are we cool?" No response or movements. My dad thought that maybe it was some sort of huge porcupine, not uncommon in the area. He held up his rifle and looked through the scope to try and figure out what it was. Since the sun was setting behind whatever it was hard for him to see any real detail. But my dad told me what he could see freaked him out. He said that all he could make out was a large black fur-covered head and shoulder, peeking out as he was looking at it, with what he described as a large monkey-like hand grabbing the tree trunk. My dad froze, and his friend asked him what he saw. My dad just shook his head and handed his buddy the rifle. His friend saw it too, and was equally freaked out. They sat there for a minute, just staring at it. Both them and whatever that creature was, not moving. My dad has always said that he didn't know what came over him. Maybe just teenage hubris, but he suggested they go check it out. Both he and his friend clambered up the left side of the embankment, and when they got to the top, the creature had ducked behind the tree. They slowly approached and circled around the tree, my dad keeping the rifle handy. He always said that he didn't know why, because that small caliber wouldn't have done much of anything against something that big. They both circled around the tree, and it turned out there was nothing there. It was just gone. They didn't know where something that big could have run off to in that short amount of time without them seeing it, but nevertheless they checked the area just to see if they could find any sign of what it was. Turns out they found 2 depressions where it would have been standing, but due to the fall leaf litter, there wasn't any definition to the tracks. He did say that whatever it was big and heavy. The tracks were about 12 to 14 inches in length. Then he went on to say that they estimated the creature to be about 8 feet tall. Other than the tracks, there was nothing else to be found. No smell, no fur, no additional tracks. Nothing in the tree itself. Nothing. Afterwards, he said they decided to just go back to the house and never really mentioned it to anyone, or even each other. My dad does love the paranormal, but is a healthy skeptic when it comes to this stuff. That event, he says, made him a believer in Bigfoot. And after having my own encounter, I've come to believe in something as well. I'm not saying it was Bigfoot, but I think something is out there that hasn't been explained.
This happened in 2013, in northeastern Ohio. I will add we also have an active Bigfoot hunters group who frequent the state park where this took place. My grandmother, high school boyfriend, and I were headed to the day parking area for the horseback riding trails when this happened. I was 17 at the time. We had just pulled into the entrance road to the parking area when I watched something walk across the black pavement road that headed back to the camping area. This road is probably 10 to 15 feet across, just enough for a truck and trailer to fit. I watched whatever this creature was cross the road, stop momentarily in the middle to glance at us, then continue walking. It probably took 1, maybe 2 steps for the creature to cross. I was the only one who completely saw this, as my boyfriend at the time noticed right as the creature hit the tall grass on the other side, heading towards the power lines. From where I was, the creature was about 400 yards away, so it was difficult for me to make out any specific features. I just knew it was large. It was walking on 2 legs, and it was not a person. I was understandably a little freaked out, but we continued to unload our horses and saddle them. We decided to start by walking the horses down the black pavement road to the gravel road, as this was the best way to get to a certain trail. At the exact point where I saw the creature walk, our horses became noticeably agitated. My horse specifically, who can frighten easily, began to fight me to pass that stretch of pavement. I could tell something was causing her to not want to continue and to run back to the trailer, which was not normal for her. Even as I got her past that spot, she continued to walk sideways, as if to make sure she could see what was behind her. All I can assume is that she smelled or sensed something in that area that was frightening her, and she wanted to bolt. I can't say for sure what I saw, but it was a memory that has stuck with me for a long time.
Quite a few years ago, I was camping out in the woods and had a strange experience. I am honestly asking if anyone has heard of this kind of thing with the Bigfoot. My girlfriend and I decided to go on a camping trip. It was far from the city, at an abandoned campgrounds. Nobody around for miles. It was windy as hell that night. We had supper, pitched the tent, and settled in for the night. I woke up a couple times in the tent and swore I could hear heavy footsteps. But with the wind, I thought it was just my vivid imagination. But I did not sleep very good that night. In the morning, my girlfriend and I got up and prepared some coffee. She looked back and turned white. I was confused, until I turned around. I turned back and looked back at the tent. Right over the back of the tent was a tall tree, and in that tree, maybe 9 to 11 feet up directly over the tent, was a freshly severed leg of a deer, dripping blood onto the tent. It had been impaled onto a broken branch. It was a fresh, bleeding kill. The part that still haunts me today is how far up the tree it was. I'm 6 feet tall, and there was no way I could have gotten that limb up there without climbing the tree. But there was no good way to climb that tree. I'm still wondering to this day how it could have gotten there. It wasn't there when we got to the campsite. It had to have taken something with huge reach to do that. The limb was also severed and not cut, like it was ripped off the body of the deer. Has anyone ever heard of something like this with a Bigfoot? I have tried to explain this event with any logical and rational process, but I'm at a loss. Needless to say, we packed up the car in record time and pissed off out of there as fast as possible. We never went back either.
It's hard to tell what was going on there. The deer leg in the tree could have been a warning to the people that there were dangerous things in the woods. Or it could have been a threat. Make sure to tell me what you think in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time for this week's top commenter! This week's top comment comes from Abhi. And it says, "Oh my god, I'm gonna have my gallbladder removed soon, but watching this has already given me PTSD. Abby, I hope your operation goes well, and just wanted to let you know that I am only qualified to perform dual cardio addendums, so you are completely safe from me. Now before I let you go today, I have something very important to say to those of you interested in Bigfoot hunting. Whatever you do not use pheromone lures. Poor Jack went out to find a Bigfoot, and instead of Bigfoot found him. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll see you all next week."